Picture this, a vast, mountainous crossroads where two of the world's great empires, the Russian and the Ottoman, have just collapsed. At the same time, what's left behind is a total power vacuum. It's a historical earthquake, and the aftershocks are literally creating new countries while reigniting conflicts that are centuries old.
So let's get into it. Here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with that massive imperial collapse, then watch the chaotic birth of new republics. From there, we'll try to untangle the messy fights over territory, meet a new, powerful force rising in Anatolia, and finally look at the very unsettled legacy all of this left behind.
All right, the year is 1918. World War I is finally grinding to a halt. But it wasn't just a war between nations. It was a war that killed the very idea of empire. And right here in the Caucasus, the Russian Romanov dynasty is gone, completely swallowed by revolution. At the very same time, the Ottoman Empire, what they used to call the sick man of Europe, is taking its last dying breath. Just like that, two colossal powers that had defined this region for centuries simply shattered.
Now you have to understand, this was not some quiet, peaceful handover of power. It was an explosion. Into this void rushed all of these powerful national dreams. Georgian, Armenian, Azerbaijani, all of them were suddenly free and absolutely determined to carve out their own nations, often on the very same pieces of land, like the mountains of Karabakh.
And just a quick pause here, if you're getting something out of this deep dive, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on that notification bell, and share and like my videos. It really does help. All the information we're using today is compiled from open sources. Okay, thank you. Now let's get back to it.
So, with the empires gone, the first instinct for a lot of the local leaders was, hey, we've got to stick together. They tried to form a united front against all the chaos, a single state that would hold all the different peoples of the South Caucasus. But, well, that unity turned out to be incredibly fragile.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The Transcaucasian Federative Republic gets declared on April 22, 1918. Barely a month later, it's gone. The national interests were just too different, the external pressures too strong. Georgia walked out first on May 26th. Just 2 days later, Azerbaijan and Armenia declared their own independence. And that was it. The Federation was officially dead. The dream of unity lasted all of 36 days.
So independence wasn't the happy ending. Nope, it was just the beginning of the next fight. Because now you've got three new countries right next to each other, and the immediate question is, where does my country end and yours begin? Those old imperial maps, they were about to become blueprints for war.
In these four regions, these became the flashpoints: Kars, Nakhchivan, Zangezur, and Mountainous Karabakh. Every single one of them had mixed populations, and every single one was strategically vital. Kars was this major fortress city, Nakhchivan and Zangezur were critical land bridges connecting everyone. Naturally, all three new republics laid claim to them, creating this toxic, impossible mess.
And to really get what they were fighting over, you need to know these two words: Uyezd and Guberniya. Think of them like old Russian counties and provinces. They were just administrative lines on a map, never meant to be international borders. But this is something we see over and over in history, right? An empire draws a line for its own convenience, and a century later, that same line becomes a deadly fault line for conflict.
And this table right here, this is the whole problem in a nutshell. Take Zangezur. According to the Russians' own numbers from 1916, you've got a slight majority of Muslims, about 54%, and a very large minority of Armenians, nearly 45%. So how do you draw a clean border through that? The answer is you can't. Both sides could point to these exact same numbers and make a totally valid case that the land was theirs.
Which leads to the central question of this whole mess. When history, ethnicity, and geography all crash into each other, who actually gets to draw the line on the map? For these brand new republics, the answer was pretty simple: whoever had the stronger army.
But these fights between the new Caucasian republics, they weren't happening in some isolated bubble. Just south of the border, a totally different kind of storm was brewing. The old Ottoman government in Istanbul was basically powerless, but a defiant, new Turkish national movement was taking shape, led by a general who made the incredible decision to give up everything he had for an idea. And it's through careful historical work from sources like these that we can piece together what happened in these critical moments.
This timeline really sets the stage. In May of 1919, foreign troops land on Turkish soil in Izmir. It's a national humiliation. The Sultan's government does nothing, so, out in the eastern city of Erzurum, a general named Mustafa Kemal makes his move. He literally takes off his uniform.
But this was so much more than just a resignation. He didn't just quit the army.
He renounced every single title, every medal, even his job as aide-de-camp to the Sultan himself. It was a massive symbolic break. He was basically declaring that true authority no longer came from the Sultan in a captured city, but from the will of the people in Anatolia. This was the beginning of a revolution led by a man in a civilian suit.
And the influence of this new movement immediately started spilling over the border. In Kars, a pro-Turkish government just springs into existence. Now, it was crushed pretty quickly, but it was a clear signal. The Turkish nationalist cause was a major new player on the board, and it offered a powerful, organized alternative that directly challenged the claims of the new Armenian Republic in that region.
Okay, so we've got three new republics all fighting each other, and a powerful nationalist movement rising right next door. But the future of the Caucasus wasn't going to be decided by them alone. The great powers, they were watching, and they had their own ideas.
Great Britain was the main allied power on the ground, but their main goal was just stopping the spread of Bolshevism. They didn't really see these new republics as countries in their own right. They were more like chess pieces in the old great game against Russia. The Turkish nationalists just made everything more complicated. And all the while, the shadow of a new Soviet Russia was getting longer and longer, poised to sweep in and take back what the old empire had lost.
And that leaves us with this final heavy question. That brief, wild period of independence from 1918 to 1920, it ended when the Soviets rolled back in. But the conflicts didn't just disappear. The arguments over Karabakh, Zangezur, Nakhchivan, they were just frozen in time, lying dormant under Soviet rule, ready to explode again decades later, which is exactly what we've seen happen. The lines that were drawn and the blood that was shed in those few chaotic years created a legacy that is still shaping the Caucasus today.